The ordinary council meeting on 19th of February open. I'll please remind all present that mobile phones must be switched off before the meeting and that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledges the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land. I pay my respects to the traditional custodians, their ancestors who cared for this country for many thousands of years, and their elders and descendants who continue to care for country. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islands people here today. Councillors, you are reminded the oath or affirmation of office made by you under section 233A of the Act and your obligations under Council's Code of Conduct to disclose and appropriately manage conflicts of interest. We have no apologies. We're on to the minutes. I move that we confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of December 2024. Could I get a seconder for that? I will now put that motion. All in favour? And it is carried unanimously. Okay. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Russell.
In relation to agenda item 8.27, and I'm declaring non-pecuniary, non-significant and remaining and staying.
Could you just declare why it's non-significant, please?
The interest is association with one of the representatives from New South Wales Police on the Traffic Committee. I declare a non-pecuniary, less than significant interest as any advocacy I engage with in my professional role on this matter provides no personal advantages as a consequence of my association. And my association is not the representative from New South Wales Police who engaged in the site assessment on this matter.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations? No more? Great. The Mayoral minute was circulated with the business papers, so I'll move that the Council endorse the following motion for submission to the 2025 National General Assembly. Did anyone want to speak to this? No one? I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Councillors, I will now move a procedural motion that we resolve the order of business be changed in order to bring forward the following items by exception, and that the officer's recommendation for each item be adopted. The items I would like to deal with by exception are item 8.1, 8.3, 8.5, 8.6, 8.9, 8.10, 8.12, 8.14, 8.15, 8.16, 8.20, 8.21, 8.22, 8.23, 8.24, 8.25, 8.26, and 8.28. I will just ask you to just double check those for me, and if you have any dramas, let me know. So are there any items within this list that any councillors would like to speak or vote against? Could I get a seconder, please? Councillor Kent. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Bear with me for a second. I'll just fix up my paperwork. Thank you. Our first item, 8.2, Volunteer Management Policy, Draft for Public Exhibition. Could I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Kent, and a seconder. Councillor Russell. Councillor Kent.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the Acting General Manager, I'd just like to compliment council staff on the quality of the draft and asked was it informed by other councils' volunteer policies?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Kent, yes, it was informed by other councils. I have received that confirmation from staff. I can defer to my general peer, not today, but usually, Ms Jones, to comment maybe on how many councils.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. A number of councils' policies were benchmarked in preparation of this policy. I can give you assurance that it is consistent with other councils' documents at this point in time. Thank you.
Thanks very much. That's all.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Russell.
I would just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge our volunteers and the fact that we would not have the thriving and healthy community if it isn't for that volunteer community spirit that really does so much of the heavy lifting in the Shire. Thank you all.
Would anyone else like to speak to this? Okay, I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 8.4, Outdoor Dining and Goods on the Footpath Policy, Draft for Adoption. The recommendation is on page 13 of the agenda. Could I get a mover, please? Councillor Moylan, and a seconder. Councillor Foley. Councillor Moylan.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Before we go into debate about this, I do have a question. So through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager, if you could assist me, please. I can't find the reference to the payment plan in the attachment 2. So I'm assuming it's in there. I've had a good look and I can't find it. So if we could note that any decision made today is based on the assumption that it will be put in there or it's already in there.
General Manager, did you need a second to have a look for that, or do you want me to?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, I'll just have a look to see if we can find something. So I'm of the understanding that's on page 9 of the policy, which is page 57 of the attachment, the PDF attachment. And I might just ask Mr McAllister to help guide that location.
Yes, I can confirm. Sorry, just got to zoom in. I can confirm that it is on. If I can just zoom out. sorry, page 4 of 9 at the bottom. It's the last dot point, and it's page 52 of the business paper.
Councillor Moylan, you happy with that response?
Yes, thank you for the assistance.
Anything further?
Yes, so fellow councillors, Mr Mayor, the intention for this motion is to reduce red tape on our local business operators with the flexibility around invoicing, but also to lengthen the time of the licence approval. So I'm very much in support of your positive voting on this. There was a small change made. Instead of monthly invoicing, the recommendation is to also offer the option of a payment plan, which I think is very reasonable, and it actually throws it over to the business owner to decide, do they want an annual fee or a monthly fee? And we've just established it is, in fact, in the policy. So I fully support this recommendation.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Russell.
I would like to propose an amendment to the officer's recommendation.
Okay, could I grab the wording of that, please?
I would like to add, so that Council adopt the outdoor dining policy as included in attachment 2 to this report, with an amendment to remove the draft outdoor dining and goods on footpath policy, to remove the following clauses in 4.6. The outdoor furniture standards. The design of all outdoor furniture, including style and materials, is to be approved by Council. The furniture used must be aesthetically pleasing and involve a colour scheme and materials that are both practical and serviceable and in keeping with the surrounding area and shop front.
Thank you. Are you happy with those words on the screen? Just double check.
Yes.
Could I get a seconder for that? A seconder, that motion has lapsed. Would anyone else like to speak to this? No one else? I'll now put this in motion. I will now...
Actually, sorry, Mr Mayor.
The motion has lapsed.
Oh, right,
Yep.
we're out of time.
Mhm.
Okay.
I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Councillors, I'll now move a procedural motion that the order of business be changed so that notice of motion 2/2025 reinstatement of prayer of the Code of Meeting Practice be brought forward and dealt with immediately. Just for clarity to those watching, this is because it will inform the next item agenda. That's why we're bringing it forward. Could I get a seconder for that? Councillor Duffy. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Okay. 9.2, notice of motion, the reinstatement of the prayer to the Code of Meeting Practice. The motion is listed on page 88 of the agenda and was submitted by Councillor Duffy, that Council reinstate the prayer to be included in the Code of Meeting Practice. Councillor Duffy, would you like to move your motion?
Yes.
Could I get a seconder, please? Councillor Moylan. Councillor Duffy, you have the floor.
Whew. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I would like to table the letters of support I have received of this motion. Got here. I have been approached by a large number of church leaders from different religions in the Winter Caribbean to reinstate the prayer into the Code of Meeting Practice. The prayer being reintroduced into the Code of Meeting Practice retains a culture behind these values that is important for our area. We are constantly looking for more opportunities for inclusiveness. Over half of our residents identified as Christian at the last census. Not having a prayer is by nature of it not being inclusive. We all have different values and beliefs, and respecting one another's, knowing we are all different, is what we do in a democratic society. Having a prayer in the council chambers dates back to the 1940s and recognises that we as a nation acknowledge God. Our state and federal parliaments pray before the commencement of each session. Our national anthem mentions God in the third verse, and we all celebrate and have days off for Christmas and Easter, which are Christian holidays, no matter your belief. I understand that not everyone would share my values on this. However, I believe we should let the community speak on it to truly get their representation and let it go to public exhibition. By not allowing this to go to public exhibition, we are in nature being undemocratic and not letting the community have their say, which is why we were elected. If individual councillors wish to not be present for the prayer, they are welcome to respectfully leave the chambers for the duration of the prayer, as has been the situation for previous councillors. However, it is in the best interest that our whole community is represented, not letting our own personal interests get in the way of this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Moylan.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to commend Councillor Duffy for the leadership taken on this. It's very impressive. And I'd like to remind fellow councillors and Mr Mayor that this is to restore what was in place before administration and for it to then be put into the hands of the community to let us know what they think, which I think is a very reasonable approach. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Champion.
Thank you. I'd like to speak against the motion. Deciding on whether or not to pray is a conversation our community has already had with council, and quite recently. The last time there was a discussion about whether or not we should have a civic prayer, 68% of respondents objected. If every time the council conducts a consultation and gets an answer we don't like, and we just try again, then we will quickly lose the trust of the community. Regardless, this discussion should be about more than just the numbers. It should be about principles. We have a responsibility to represent everyone in our community. It's written in black and white in our job description in the Local Government Act that equality is important and we should respect the diversity of our population. Our community should see themselves represented without bias towards particular groups or implying favour in our decisions. That's why government at all levels should be secular spaces, because this is how we respect religious difference. The decision to scrap the prayer previously was one that reflected our collective commitment to inclusivity, respect and diversity within our community. It also honours the independence of thought of each individual councillor and our capacity to be guided by the values that we each individually hold dear. I understand that for some people, including councillors here, this will mean being guided by their Christian values. I have a great respect for that. And I hope that they will continue to be guided by those values regardless of whether or not councillors are led in prayer. But I'm not a Christian. I should not be required to pray. And I should not be required to engage in prayer, just as I would not prevent others from praying should you wish. Future councillors and staff members may be Muslim, Baha'i, Hindu, or any one of the other religions represented across our community. Tell me, should any person ever be compelled in their place of work to pray to a God they don't believe in? There are a lot of values in the proposed pair that I agree with: wisdom, insight, integrity, compassion, care for the vulnerable, the common good and the welfare of future generations, which too often get overlooked. These ideas deserve to be reflected on and championed here in the chamber. However, placing those ideas in the context of a Christian prayer risks excluding people who do not share that religious perspective. There are councils in both Queensland and Victoria that have been issued legal advice that to conduct Christian prayer in their meetings, which are the workplace of councillors and staff, is actually discriminatory. I believe it's discriminatory here. I support people's right to pray, and they should do it on their own time. There is nothing stopping any of us from taking some time before our meetings to pray. This should not be imposed on others who choose not to. If this motion passes, I will not participate in pre-meeting prayer. This council will make a deliberate decision to exclude me from this chamber on the basis of my beliefs. I would not do that to any of you, and I implore you not to do it to me.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, General Manager, fellow councillors, council staff and members of the public. I'm James Farrell and I intend to speak against the motion. Prayer was removed from the Carriby Council in June of 2022. In my view, it should not be reinstated. I'm not against religion, simply against it being part of council meetings. There are some 500 councils in Australia, approximately 1/3 of which have the prayer before the meeting. Some would argue it's a long-standing tradition for councils in Australia. That statement is somewhat subjective. It was introduced to Victoria and New South Wales councils in 1949. That was in my lifetime, so I don't regard it as long-standing. Not all people who are present at council meetings follow Christianity. Council prayers in a council chamber are inconsistent with the right to freedom of religion or belief. It's not right to compel others to conform to one's religious beliefs or practices. Every member of the public, council staff, and indeed councillors have the right to attend public meetings of council without the requirement to participate in any form of religious prayer or ceremony. In the 2021 census, just under 44% of Australians identified as Christians, while 49% identified as other or no faith. I think it's important to understand the role faith plays in society today is quite different to 40 or 50 years ago. I will quote a report from ABC News which may be relevant to councils in the future. The report said Pyrenees Shire Council in Victoria is the latest municipality to remove the opening prayer. It's understood to be the only council so far to react to Council Watch's complaint with a vote. Council documents showed legal advice presented to the council at its February meeting recommended scrapping an opening prayer in meeting agendas. Continuing to do so would unlawfully infringe on the rights contained within the Victoria Chamber of Human Rights and Responsibilities, the recommendation read. New South Wales does not have a Charter of Human Rights, so this charter does not apply, but perhaps may be worth thinking about. I will finish with a little something for you to ponder from Council Watch President at Victoria, Dean Hurlston, and I quote, Greater Bendigo City Council invites members participating to take a private moment of reflection, which Mr Hurlston called a fantastic idea. A person of faith himself, Mr Hurlston said, it's the imposition, not the faith, that's the problem. Mr Hurlston went on to say, for people with religious trauma, having the prayer read out could feel like an absolute smack in the face. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy, for having the courage of bringing this forward. I think it sparked a very interesting and important discussion within our community. I've been in support of bringing this out to community consultation, not because I believe that we should necessarily have a strictly Christian prayer before our meeting, but I do think that we can work towards something that is inclusive of all people, that helps us with set our united intentions. When something is inclusive, it moves beyond religion to spirituality. I agree entirely with you, Councillor Farrell, that we should never impose our religion on anyone. That's part of the reason I think that there is, in some ways, this response to the concept of bringing prayer into the chamber, because there has been overreach at times by the church, and there is that necessity for the religions and the governance to be in some ways set apart, but spirituality is something that is by its very nature inclusive of all. And we live and work on ancient lands here, and it was never perceived in any way in our First Nations cultures that you could separate spirituality from governance. In fact, they can and should inform each other if they are inclusive. So I will vote in support of putting this out to public exhibition, and if it does go out, I welcome input from the community as to how we can make that inclusive, more inclusive. The suggestion there, more inclusive. I know that Councillor Duffy has worked with as many faith leaders in our community as she can, but there's always room for improvement. If there is any way that we can set that intention, and if it is, as you suggest, that we pause to take a moment of reflection, then that's another suggestion. But I think that there is a role that can be taken to pause and think before we start our governance.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, I'd like to remind
Sorry,
councillors...
Sarah, did you speak to this?
Yes.
So,
Can I...
no, you
No.
just one speaker. Thank you. So I'll just reiterate for those watching, this isn't to reinstate it immediately, this is to go on exhibition, so I just wanted to confirm that for everybody. With that, I will now put the motion. All those in favour, if you could raise your... Sorry? Apologies. You do have the right to reply. I'm sorry, Councillor Duffy.
No problem. I do just have a really quick reply. And it's just to really reiterate that it's not a Christian prayer. It is acknowledging God in all forms. We do need to let the community speak and not be undemocratic and not allow this to go to public exhibition. Or we really should be letting the community have their say. It's not excluding anyone, but it's welcoming everyone.
Thank you. I will now put the motion. I'll ask you raise your hands so I can do a count. All those in favour? It's Councillor Fitzpatrick, Councillor Duffy, Councillor Moylan and Councillor Russell. All those against? We have Councillor Champion, Councillor Farrell, Councillor Foley, Councillor Kent, Councillor Smith. That motion has been lost. We'll just pause for a moment while the gallery... Okay. Item 8.7, Code of Meeting Practice, draft for adoption. The recommendation is on page 18 of the agenda. Could I get a mover for this, please? Councillor Smith. Could I get a seconder, please? Councillor Foley. Councillor Smith. So, 2 seconds. Councillor Smith.
So I'd like to move this motion, and I think the change of public forum time is a good one, given that we've got a very engaged community. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this?
I would like to propose a new...
Amendment?
it has to be an amendment at this stage, doesn't it? Yes, an amendment, please.
Okay. I think we do have the words of that, so I'll just pull them up and I'll get you to clarify them before we move forward. Councillor Russell, I will just get you to read through the whole thing for us if you can. You read through it first, make sure and then we'll find a seconder.
Yes, that's correct.
Councillors comfortable with the amendment? If the words, do they know what it's saying? Happy? Good point. Just for clarity for the live stream and everyone here, we'll just get you to read the whole amendment out, please. Councillor Russell.
I propose that the draft Code of Meeting Practice at attachment 8.7.2 to the subject report be amended so that the following clauses read as follows. A, Clause 3.1. Ordinary meetings of the Council will be held on the 4th Tuesday of each month between February and November and the 2nd Tuesday in December. No meetings shall be held in January. Meetings will commence at 3:30 p.m. at the Civic Administration Centre, Council Chambers, Elizabeth Street, Moss Vale. B, Clause 3.8. The General Manager must send to each councillor at least 10 business days before the meeting of the Council a notice specifying the time, date and place at which the meeting is to be held and the business proposed to be considered at the meeting. C, Clause 4.1. The Council may hold a public forum on the 3rd Tuesday of the month commencing at 5 p.m. between February and November and the 1st Tuesday in December prior to each ordinary meeting of the Council for the purpose of hearing oral submissions from the members of the public on items of business to be considered at the meeting. Public forums may also be held prior to extraordinary Council meetings and meetings of committees of the Council. That 2 be amended by the deletion of 4.7, 4.8 and 4.9 to allow for an unlimited number of speakers at a public forum. And 3, that this be placed on public exhibition for a further 42 days before returning to Council for adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Smith, do you accept this amendment to the motion? Okay, you'll need a seconder now. Could I get a seconder for this? Councillor Duffy? You have the floor. Councillor Russell.
The intention behind this amendment is to make innovations to our governance that ensure we can achieve the best possible outcomes as councillors and improve our ability to listen to and incorporate the contribution our community has to offer. Often, matters that come before council have taken months or even years of work to formulate, taking 2 weeks or 10 business days to ensure that final decisions we make are fully informed and polished will help us ensure we achieve that amazing reputational legacy in leadership and good governance that we all want to be proud of. We have shifted from a council consisting of principally retired individuals to a mix of representation, juggling work commitments and family life alongside our role as councillors. As a sole parent of a young child with special needs, doing a master's and about to start a teaching placement, I'm an example of that. The additional space between the publication of the business paper, the public forum and the ordinary meeting will mean that I am able to manage my different roles and responsibilities sensibly. And I believe that when we allow that extra time and space, we also open up the capacity for a more diverse range of people to digest some of the business paper and contribute to the public forum, enabling more meaningful community engagement. At times, issues require investigation by visiting a site. I believe it is preferable to achieve this by allowing space after the publication of the business paper and information arising from the public forum to do so, rather than relying on mechanisms to defer business. Our community are a truly important resource we can harness to achieve greater things. There is very likely someone or many out there who know a lot more on any topic that may be presented to us than we do. And if that wisdom has the capacity to be harnessed, then let's find a way to open that potential up. By changing the timing of the meeting to 5 p.m, we open the potential for greater participation at the end of the working day. Setting that timing on a different day to our council meetings means that we can easily hear from all those who wish to have their voices heard on any matter. There can be no better example of how valuable and unique each contribution has the potential to be than the Independent Planning Commission public hearing for Plasrefine, where I was able to learn something new from everyone who spoke. That is a benefit for council, aside from the fact that our community have a right to be heard. We are here to listen. That is a key remit of our role. And there is a cherry on top. If all that is not enough, we save money and staff resources on extraordinary general meetings by moving the timing to the last week of the month, so it's fiscally responsible. I commend the amendment to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Would anyone like to speak to this amendment? Okay, with that, I will put this amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Duffy, Councillor Moylan, Councillor Russell. All those against? Councillor Fitzpatrick, Councillor Champion, Councillor Farrell, Councillor Foley, Councillor Kent, Councillor Smith. That amendment is lost. We'll revert back to the original motion. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Smith, you have a right to reply.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to just reinforce, given we have already voted on this and it has been on public exhibition and there was only one submission given to that from the public, I suggest that this code of meeting practice should go forward. I think we must be very careful. I'm very mindful we are all have families and have our personal situations. However, we serve in the interest of the community. We signed up for this job, so to speak, and this is, the meetings are when they are, and I think that we need to be very conscious of not doing things for personal reasons. So very much respect Councillor Russell's approach, but I think let's not waste time on this one, please.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. With that, I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Champion, Councillor Farrell, Councillor Foley, Councillor Kent, Councillor Smith, Councillor Fitzpatrick. That is carried. Item 8.8, Quarterly Delivery Program and Budget Review. The recommendation is on page 21 of the agenda. Could I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Foley. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Moylan. Councillor Foley. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Yes. Councillor Moylan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a question through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager. The monthly reporting and the commentary in the quarterly business review statement was a welcomed initiative, particularly for financial transparency. Is there a pragmatic way that we can still achieve the monthly reporting and the commentary?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll refer the question to our CFO to assist with answering that solution.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Moylan, a lot of the information that is presented in the monthly report is a status update with a number of caveats. Doesn't talk about any budget adjustments per se. The only difference is the movement in the actuals from a month-to-month basis. So I guess if council is using that report to make informed decision making, I would not have put that in the recommendation. Looking at the reports being moved on bulk on a month-to-month basis, my recommendation was that we look at discontinuing that report and focusing our efforts on the quarterly report. If there is anything that comes to mind in regard to any financial emergencies or any financial issues that are arising, we can bring a special report to council through that mechanism there.
Thank you. Councillor Moylan.
And thank you very much for that. With the monthly report, is there any pressing reason why that can't continue?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, my understanding is it's around the resourcing to produce and publish that report each month. And if the CFO would like to add to that comment, I'll welcome it.
Thank you, General Manager. There is up to 30 to 40 hours per month that goes into that report. There is validation of numbers, double checking and triple checking within that space of time. Once the numbers are published, they become a matter of public record. So we do put a lot of time and effort into that report.
Councillor Moylan, do you have any further?
Thank you. Is there any middle ground that we could explore so that we can still achieve a monthly report and in a more pragmatic way? Is there anything, any suggestions on how those 30 to 40 hours can be reduced, but we still receive this monthly transparency?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, an immediate solution doesn't come to mind, but what I could suggest is I note that we have some onboarding sessions with councillors on Friday that focus on finance and finance reporting. So maybe that can be a discussion point on Friday to see what mechanisms could be available, if you have comfort with that.
Councillor Moylan, do you have anything further?
Thank you very much, General Manager. I have another question through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager regarding the grants. So I note in the report, in the business papers, that we've achieved 3 out of the 12 grant applications, and there's another 21 which are pending. What are we doing, or are we intending to do anything to increase this success rate in grants?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, grant applications are a challenging task for all councils, and not only councils but other institutions are after the same grants. I will defer to the CFO, who can talk about the status of those grants at the moment and what activities occur with the human resourcing we have at the moment to explain those activities.
Thank you, General Manager. We do have a grants management officer, as you're aware, and it is currently vacant, but when they were in the position, they were validating with the grant funding bodies to make sure that we align our criteria with our application with the criteria. We also get feedback. So an example is the Mittagong Playhouse. We saw feedback after the first round of grant applications. We were then successful in the second round of applications. So putting some of those proactive controls in place are what we have. The processes that are determined by those funding bodies are individual, so they're case by case, so I can't comment on those, but they are, as the General Manager was saying, they're speculative in nature. There may be oversubscriptions to some of these grant applications, so they need to make their determinations. I don't have oversight of those, Councillor Moylan, but we do have some proactive controls in place.
Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, I'll just say that obviously the Playhouse was a recent success of that example. We also had a quite successful one just prior to the councillors being elected, which was the artificial intelligence tool for development assessment, which is under development at the moment, to be showcased sometime in autumn. So I think we are quite successful. It's just a matter of keeping up the momentum and asking councillors to continue that momentum and support as well. Thank you.
Did you have any further questions?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager again. Would it be right to say, this is more broadly, that financial discipline overall puts us in a better position to, or puts us in good stead for grant applications?
General Manager.
For you, Mr Mayor, I would agree with that statement.
Councillor Moylan, do you have any further questions?
No, thank you very much. Okay. I would like to propose an amendment, Mr Mayor, to go to the floor.
The wording of that, please.
Simply to delete 3A.
Happy with that? Yep. Could I please seek a seconder for
Yes.
that? Sorry, I apologize. Councillor Foley, would you accept that?
No.
In that case, I'll need a seconder. Councillor Russell. Councillor Moylan, you have the floor.
Yes, I think councillors, we're all getting along so well, which is lovely, and we're particularly getting along well with our council staff and our general manager. However, I do think that having monthly financial statement reporting to council is very important, particularly given we're under a PIO. And particularly due to the delicate state of the finances that we're in. So I'm confident that in Friday's session we can work on something more pragmatic for the finance team. But I do urge you to put ahead your integrity in financial transparency and discipline to both the community and ourselves ahead of our relationship with council staff.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Russell.
I have a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Acting General Manager. Are you, I was aware when this measure was put in place to introduce monthly reporting by the former administrator, and at that time there was expressed that there were, it would perhaps stretch resources within staff. Has anything been done to look at expanding those resources to make sure that we can keep in the finance section to make sure that we can keep on top of this without overstretching our staff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think in response to your question, I think it's more around committing resources to a monthly report then takes away from the production of something else. So it is really a question of expansion if the resolution or the amendment is passed. That's really the question. If it's not, then I think the question is that the finance department have the resources to meet the recommendation that's before you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Kent.
I'd just like to speak against the motion. I'm quite happy with the Acting General Manager's offer to look at alternatives through our forum on Friday. And I'd just like to comment that Councillor's comment about the our finances being in a delicate state. I think all local councils have challenges in managing their finances, but I wouldn't position Wingecarriby's finances as in a delicate state. We've heard in the previous council meetings and towards the back of last year that we are hitting all of the benchmarks from a financial point of view, and I actually think our finances are in good shape. Whilst we get limited revenue from various sources, our finances, I'd put them in good shape rather than delicate. That's just a comment.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would like to speak against the amendment. I'd like to reiterate what Councillor Kent has said. I think very wise points. I note that to change to quarterly, that would bring us more in line with the Office of Local Government, and a question to the General Manager. My take on this would be quarterly reporting would make it more efficient and more effective and bring us in line with the OLG. Is that a fair summary?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Would anybody else like to speak to this? Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, look, I hear what Councillor Moylan is saying. However, I think we do need to work collaboratively with staff and know that we I guess my question to the General Manager is that we will get the information that's in a monthly report, just quarterly. Is that correct?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, maybe just some clarity on the question, because you referred to getting a monthly report but quarterly. So, I mean, what I'm suggesting is what's recommended is ceasing of monthly financial reports. So you would receive it quarterly.
Yeah, sorry about that confusing question. What I was trying to say is that the information that's in those monthly reports, we would get that same information. It would just be in a more efficient manner for staff as well.
I understand your question now, thank you. Through you, General Manager, I'll just refer to the CFO just to add some value to that question.
Yes, that's correct. So we will add narrative around the actual. So I believe that's the only difference that you will see from a monthly report to a quarterly report. We currently comment in the quarterly reports on the budget adjustments, but we can add in some commentary around the actual trajectories as well.
Are there any other questions? Would anyone else like to speak to this? Okay, I will now put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. Councillor Moylan, all those against, please raise your hand. Councillor Champion, Councillor Duffy, Councillor Farrell, Councillor Foley, Councillor Kent, Councillor Russell, Councillor Smith, Councillor Fitzpatrick. We'll now revert back to the original motion that was moved by Councillor Foley. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Would you like your right of reply? I will now put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Champion, Councillor Duffy, Councillor Farrell, Councillor Foley, Councillor Kent, Councillor Russell, Councillor Smith, Councillor Fitzpatrick. All those against? Councillor Moylan. That is carried. Item 8.11, Southern Regional Livestock Exchange, the renovation timeline. The recommendation is on page 35 of the agenda. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Russell. Could I get a seconder, please? Councillor Foley. Councillor Russell.
I wanted to thank the staff for their update, their clear update, and commend them on managing to maintain their expected timeline for delivery despite a delayed start. I know that all users of the Southern Regional Livestock Exchange are really eagerly awaiting the start of a proper canteen facility there, and it certainly opens up more potential for things like school excursions to the Livestock Exchange, and we've got a real resource there in our community, an educative resource that we can really make more use of once the canteen's there. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Kent.
Just to support Councillor Russell's sentiments there, I think this is another example, and as a new councillor, I'm seeing quite a few of them, of really excellent work by council staff in partnership with the community. So, you know, compliments to the Acting General Manager and staff.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Russell, would you like to use your right of reply? Thank you. With that, I will put the motion. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously. Item 8.13, Consolidated Development Control Plan, Consultant Engagement. The recommendation is on page 40 of the agenda. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Smith, a seconder. Councillor Foley. Councillor Smith, would you like to speak to this?
This issue is clearly a very important one for our community, and I think all councillors. I think that we really need, this has raised a number of questions, and I think that what we really like to find out a little bit more, and I'd like to ask this through you, the General Manager, there's discussion of standard template, there's a discussion, and it was raised in the public forum as well, around consolidating things from the different place DCPs. Could you elaborate a little more on some of those issues raised in the public meeting today, and just really about whether this is just there's mentions of, I guess, also what impact this will have on the DA process and why this is being put forward in this manner?
Through you, Mr Mayor. If I may, I might just respond to those questions and maybe just expand a little bit more as well. This project, this very important project for our community, is under my normal day job in my directorate. So the importance of it is not lost. And I have some experience in development of DCPs in other councils. So I've been on the journey, and I know that the staff we have also been on that journey. In the last decade, planning ministers of all the state governments have stripped away the powers of planning from this chamber, from councillors. And some would say in doing that would also strip away those powers from the community. However, the DCP or DCPs are the one planning control that have total control and autonomy by this chamber and its community. It's really the only control. The LEP needs concurrence from the minister. State significant development, of which we recently had a decision on, of which we have another one coming, is not a local decision. You have the current Minister for Planning who's expanded the scope of state significant development recently, you may have read. So the DCP is truly the community's control when it comes to land use planning, okay? The report is written and the recommendations are written to ensure there's community consultation from day one. There is no predetermined outcome for development of a DCP other than having a consolidated, comprehensive DCP. And that's clearly written in the report. It's a consolidated, comprehensive. It's not gluing and editing 18 different DCPs. The other point I'll make is there has been historic resolutions of this council that will inform the DCP. In 2024, I can cite a few. So the Robertson Place Plan in April, and I think the median density DCP and the low density study, I think of the belief were adopted mid-2024. All of those have actions to inform a new DCP. So those resolutions are reconciled. And I also would say that we do have the slowest development assessment times in the state. Go to the council league table and have a look. There's a tab called the 10 poorest performing councils. And we're on the left-hand side, and there's a red line for the 10 worst performing. And that red line, the higher it is, the worse you are. So you can go and have a look. But that is not the motivation for the DCP review. The speakers themselves, Mr. Ryle, he said we need a new DCP. He basically said it was archaic, all the DCPs we have. Mr. Mark Webeck of the Exeter Village Association, who I've met in person when I first arrived, stressed the importance of planning controls and preservation for our villages. So what I would say is those two individuals, one is, you know, a concerned resident, let's say, and one is an active applicant. So both of them agree that a review has to happen. Now, in relation to what's proposed, if you read the first two paragraphs of a report, it states that the goal for 30 June is to develop a template to inform a DCP review. It's not a consolidated DCP at 30 June. The proposition is to have that template developed, and then our time frame is proposed to have a draft comprehensive DCP before this chamber by the end of the year, of which the journey to get there will include engagement with councillors to inform officers' approach. There'll be critical decisions on particular elements, even down to a single word in a sentence. It's a long journey. So if you imagine a consolidated DCP at the end of the year, then leading to a goal of an adopted one by 30 June 2026. Now, the resolution also talks about a consultant. And I know there's been a lot of commentary about the time's too short, 30 June, 40K's too low. What I'll say is that consultant has been engaged on the basis of contributing approximately just over 150 hours. That's an estimate of their work. And they will be guided by staff. It is not the consultant leading this and guiding this. This is guided and directed by skilled staff. And skilled staff will also be contributing a lot of work to get to those milestones. So I apologise if the report may have created confusion, and the report is in response to the Mayoral minute of last year. However, I stand by the recommendations, which clearly show the need for a consultant to assist, to produce a quality document, to go out to community consultation immediately, and there's been some questions structured and proposed to go out to the community to seek their feedback, and to also go out to community consultation at the time of the draft consolidated comprehensive being available. So there's that minimum, 2 formal community consultation processes, one starting immediately, which will gauge everyone's feedback who wants to participate in every view. Now, in that consultation, we've asked, well, the questions have been drafted to be quite specific on citing current provisions in DCPs. Now, that would be great if everyone could, but obviously that's not going to be the case. But we've at least asked, so when people make a point, they can talk to a specific clause, which will help us. On top of that, there is community engagement occurring on other projects. So the Robertson Place Plan, which was adopted in April, since that time, I believe, has had 2 community meetings since adoption, reporting directly to the committee on the progress. Now, the last one, I believe, was in December, and there's another one scheduled in June. And that place plan has 6 actions. And if you read the place plan, it says they are a high priority Those 6 actions refer to planning controls, some of them DCP. So even the adopted strategies to inform the DCPs that are not DCPs are saying we need to produce quality documents, like Mr. Ryle said. Now, it's really fine detail in DCPs, it really is. So I won't go into all the forensic considerations. But as a new council, you have the opportunity to shape this DCP on behalf of the community. And council staff are going to support the community and councillors all the way. So I personally don't see any barrier to resolving as per the recommendations. And I hope that answers all of your questions, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, General Manager. Any further questions?
So just to reiterate, so can you confirm then, you mentioned things like the Robertson Place plan, and I know there were concerns about village character being lost or this being one standard DCP. So I take it from what you're saying, 2 points. One, can you confirm that the character of various villages and the place plans already in place and the work done to date will inform this? And secondly, my take on this is that until from doing this work will help in the interim until the end of the year when it's all complete. This will help to speed up the DA process, hopefully, by streamlining it. Is that a correct analysis?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In relation to the village sentiment, again, I draw attention to the start of the body of the report, which has the target for 30 June that adoption of a standard template for the review of DCP provisions within towns and villages and for rural employment zone lands. So that is quite specific, that it has to address those current place-based DCPs. So yes, in that. On the second point, not only do councillors in the community and the strategic outcomes team have a say in the construction of the draft, other vital teams also do too. So the development assessment team are clearly one of those teams who have to have a strong voice. Also our assets team and our traffic team, how the interface of each property interfaces with the road network, parking arrangements. Our trees team, deep soil planting. There's a lot of considerations. With that in mind, we will require assessment staff to move from assessing to engaging in building a DCP. So that's going to impact our ability to assess. And if you have an adopted DCP, say 30 June 2026, the fruits of that in relation to assessment speed won't occur until after that adoption. So yes, one of the objectives is, or a clear objective is assessments to meet the Minister's expectations, but it won't be in the short term.
Any more questions? Are there any? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. That was an excellent explanation. I'm having a bit of trouble getting my head around some of the things, and forgive me, like I'm new to this role. When I think of the word template, based on my professional experience, I'm thinking about a shell document that has has categories, it's formatted, and it's something that is then populated, say, between June and December. But it's simply a template. It's not really a decision-making document. What I'm trying to get my head around is, I think what we're being asked to support today is that, one, the start of a process, two, the engagement of a consultant to support our staff to follow that process through to the end of the year, three, that we'll be engaged every kind of step in the way, because we've all had community feedback of when people say, hear a consultant's being engaged to prepare a comprehensive development control plan, people have freaked out and gone, oh no, we're putting those decisions in the hands of an external consultant. Where's the community in this? So I think my summary, I'll see if you agree with my summary. 1, we're starting a process. 2, we involved a consultant to support our staff to kind of complement our staff's capacity to get this done and to facilitate a better outcome. The first deliverable is a template by the end of June, simply a template, not a decision-making document. And then between, let's say, the approval of the template and the completion of December, the community and the councillors will be involved in in approval, review and approval. I hope that's my go at it anyway.
Through you, Mr Mayor, in summary, yes, I agree with that review.
Whoopee.
What I will say is the word template or standard template is one that is commonly used in strategic planning. So again, going back a decade ago, when the ministers really started to pull powers away from local councils on planning decisions, they introduced standard templates for LEPs and recommended for DCP. And when that introduction occurred, the whole industry started talking about templates and standard templates. So, I mean, the best way to describe it is the DCPs at the moment, the 18 of them, they're all on a template. They might be slightly different, but they're all on a template. And, the proposed template, what it is likely to have a conversation on options on how that's structured, and that will include the councillors. So, there's mechanics in it. As much as the template is just headings, there's mechanics in it. And we also want to look at how we can introduce some technology to make it more user-friendly, rather than having this hard copy thing that's so many pages and, it's put some people to sleep, not me. So there's some thinking behind it. And, the staff really want to produce a quality product for the community. And we will not be putting anything up to council when we don't think that's the case.
Thank you. Anything further?
Just to say thanks a lot.
Councillor Champion.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor, to you, GM. Thank you for all your explanations. I think it's very helpful for us to understand more about what this means. Once this project, this is the initiation sort of component, as I understand it, of the project, and then this will continue on through the rest of the year. You're saying, sorry, was it to the end of 2025 that you anticipate the consolidated DCP being completed?
For you, Mr Mayor, that's our timeline, yes.
Thank you. So my question then is, how will this document, this template, inform the next stages of that process? And what do we expect to see happening in the next stages of the process, both in terms of what the next project will look like when this one has finished, and how this one will determine and direct what that project looks like, if we don't know, and also whether we expect that the following stages of the project would be able to be conducted in-house, or whether that would also require the services of a consultant.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just for clarity, there's one project. It's a consolidated comprehensive DCP.
Apologies, I'm just talking about the initial...
The milestone.
This component that we are currently discussing.
Yeah, so what has to happen? There has to be a review of the current DCPs, and there has to be a review of the other documents that have to be considered to inform the DCP. And there'll be some experiments on how to create a template that achieves the community's expectations and is efficient to administer. That's really the first step. So how we profile that template, we have discretion. Councils have discretion. in relation to chapters, reference points, clauses. So there's actually an art to it, and I'm not the artist. I'm the critic. But that is the first step. So you have to review content to then determine a template. And that content may also include benchmarking of other councils. But the primary content will be our own. And then, once we land on a template and it's adopted, we then fill it with content. Now, we may have a pilot or two in relation to that content to show how the template would work. And we may even have those pilots that talk specifically to specific sites that may have had previous development applications to understand the mechanics of that template. So there's a lot of thinking and a lot of process, and it is a comprehensive project. And this is why it's so important to the community. But I hope that explains that step of it. So first of all, it's a template, target 30 June 2025. That template is populated with content, target end of 2025. Hopefully not December meeting. I really don't like putting up public exhibitions over holiday periods. But if it does, we're just going to extend that, okay? And then the target would be for a adopted DCP for 30 June 2026. Now, I'll caveat that it's a consolidated, comprehensive DCP proposed. Now, sometimes you just can't do it all, okay? So with that time frame in mind, we might have to be strategic and go, well, is there a certain section that we just know it's pretty optimal now, so let's not mess with it, for example. So there's things like that we'll be talking about, focusing on that time frame, because otherwise it could end up being a 2-3 year project, and we want 9 fresh councillors to adopt a DCP for the Shire on the community's behalf.
Thank you, General Manager. Any further questions?
Sorry, just to reiterate the final part of my question, which was about whether or not we would expect the following stages of the project to be managed in-house, or whether we would also be seeking a consultant for those.
Yeah, ideally, I'm a huge advocate for in-house skill and knowledge. Right, it's like it's vital. So I, regardless, the drive, the guidance, the decisions will always be in-house. Okay, and the resourcing I would like as much as possible to be in-house. So at the moment, the consultant is committed, based on the proposition, to 153 hours. Okay. Now that might be all the time they have for us. They might love some other clients as well. All right. But at that time, we might also have the skill and resources internally to take the baton ourselves. Okay, so I would like as much internal resourcing as possible on this project, and at any time that there's any proposition outside of this proposal, or even extending this proposal, it will be coming straight up to this chamber in accordance with the Mayor's Minute.
Councillor Chairman.
Just one more question. I was wondering, in the proposal that has been submitted by this consultant, is there any detail available on how the community consultation component will be conducted? Do we have any advice on what that will look like?
So the community consultation is our drive. So the consultant themselves, they're going to be there for the technical production and skill and knowledge, not necessarily consultation. The consultation will be with staff, okay? The staff are at the coalface. They are here every day, okay? The consultant, I want to use those 153 hours to produce content and template. That's where the value is, okay? So in relation to the community consultation, it will be done in accordance with Council's current adopted policies and strategies. Now, at the moment, I know they're under review, and I know they're coming back to Council in April, I believe. So the project will always be in accordance with those policies and strategies. Now, my proposition for stage one is one where it is a written response from the community members. Now, they can choose two ways. They can respond to structured questioning, or they'll be free to make comment however they like, or both. But that is what I'm proposing. And the reason why that is a proposition is because we want every piece of consultation recorded so we can reconcile those representations against the work we do and what we propose. Because if you just receive it verbally, it could get lost. And we want you to have a full, comprehensive, reconciled record of the community representations.
Thank you, General Manager. Anyone else? Councillor Russell.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the Acting General Manager. How would you respond to the presentation in the public forum from Tristan Ryle, who observed that because of the incoherent, outdated, just entrenched problems in the existing DCPs, that to amalgamate them is not actually the most efficient, effective or timely manner in which to, it's just not necessarily the best approach. Has any other approach been looked at within staff?
No, the resolutions of the past council have entrenched the view to facilitate provisions within the current DCPs. So that is what we're doing, and that is why the operational plan talks about that method, creating a template in response to those villages, rural, industry. So I think starting on a blank sheet of paper and simply going, well, this is best practice for industry, we'll be here for years. We have to reflect on the inventory of control and desire that we have written already to inform it. So I think it's a task that is unavoidable. It just has to be done as part of the process.
Thank you. And
Through you, Mr Mayor, to you, Acting General Manager, are you saying that if we wanted to defer this to explore a different approach, then we would, because we are under a performance improvement order, that we do not have that remit?
General Manager.
What I would say is, yes, and while that order's in place and while those published goals and actions are in place, that is the path we are going down. Regardless of that, I would be recommending no other way. Quite simply, we have to pull on all the levers to create the most optimal DCP possible, and that includes reconciling and condensing the content that we have. Now, again, you know, I always think about dollar productive activity. You know, I look at, sit in meetings and I go, oh man, how much hourly rate sitting here, right? So there's certain tasks that you go, well, a team member can do that might be on a lower pay rate than another one who's paid more for much more skill and experience. So the population, the redacting and duplication, it'll be a team effort. So I agree with some community members, and I've seen some comments online, and you know, saying, well, anyone can just glue and screw. Sorry, that's a building term, but yeah, anyone can, but it's not that. It is all the levers.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the Acting GM. So in regards to the brief, which as a council we are not able to see in this particular business paper, is there any scope for this council to in any way amend the existing brief due to the performance improvement order?
General Manager.
I think the performance improvement order is enshrined and those actions are enshrined. The brief itself on how we guide a consultant is a responsibility of administration staff. When you talk, are you talking about a specific consultant and all their specific actions? Is that what you're referring to, Councillor Russell?
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the Acting General Manager, I'm referring to what exactly is the scope of our ability in relation to this item of business. Other than to approve it, do we have the ability to defer it, to do we have the ability to work with administrative staff to perhaps look at any variation in the approach? And significantly, when it comes to issues like was raised by Tristan Ryle in the public forum regarding the fact that the current brief, what we can see of it, refers to reviews that were done by a consultant that in no way reflects what actually happened during the community consultation, even when the community were unanimous in what they were contributing to that consultation. So we know that there's flawed material in the brief. Do we have any scope to work on that before we commend this to Council if we choose to defer this motion at this meeting?
For you, Mr Mayor, I'm just trying to seek clarity in relation to the flaw you're referring to and the quality of outcomes from community consultation you're referring to as well. So if it's something specific in the report that you can relate your comment to, I might be able to provide greater clarity.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, to the Acting General Manager, I am sorry if I wasn't clear. So specifically, I am referring to a consultant review that was done on the residential DCPs that I participated in with Tristan Ryle, who spoke at the public forum, and others. And none of the unanimous contributions that were made by that, even though it included contributions by experts, were actually incorporated into those review documents provided by the consultant, and instead we got what we often unfortunately get from consultants, which was a cookie cutter template approach that wasn't reflective of the community engagement. So already we know that in the brief there are aspects which could be problematic, which could be just adding more work to what is already, as you have flagged, a potentially, when you say comprehensive, a potential dog's breakfast when we start to try and pick apart all the problems and flaws from the past. I'm very aware that we only get one proper shot at this during our term of council, and I want to make sure that within the scope of what we have been left with under the performance improvement order, that we are able to proceed down the...
So, Councillor,
yeah.
so could you got clarity on what Councillor's asking? Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Russell, I really appreciate the clarity. I understand what you're asking now. I value your reflection as a community member as part of the development of those reviews, which created resolutions of which are guided by staff are now guided by. I think timeframe is really important here. So the resolutions that you're referring to, the residential reviews, the medium and low density, even the Robertson Place plan, they have actions, and a lot of those actions are quite global, which say, you know, review development controls to try and achieve X and Y. Some of them are quite specific. But what I will say is the timing of the performance order expires before the draft will be presented to council. So the prescription of the DCP will be entirely at the discretion of the councillors in relation to content. I hope that answers your question.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the Acting GM, not quite, because I still want to know what scope we have in regards to this particular recommendation under a performance improvement order, acknowledging that there are some flaws in the brief.
I think the General Manager's done a lot of clarifying. Are you satisfied with your position, or would you like to continue?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I am satisfied actually. Yeah, there is an enshrined action for council to consider. There are some timeframes on it. The first one being milestone of 30 June. Now, the staff respond to those actions, those published actions, which are the expectations of a community as resolved by this council. It may not be the current councils, but this council. The speed at which staff are trying to meet those goals. But of course, council resolutions influence that speed. I hope I'm clear.
Okay, one more question, please, Councillor Russell.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the Acting GM, acknowledging that there is unanimous agreement that it is better to be rebuilding those resources within staff, and we are without a strategic planning director at the moment, and I know that staff are not at capacity. What's being done to ensure that we are starting to rebuild those resources, those staffing resources? Are positions being advertised?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, in relation to your last question, yes, they are. The function of strategic outcomes recently came under my remit. And what I will say is there was never a director role under strategic outcomes. There was a manager role, and there is an acting manager. And that acting manager was being heralded by you on the 24th of January for her contribution to Plasrefine. She has a very skilled team that is not to the optimal headcount. And we are out on market. Recently there was a senior strategic planner role that's closed. We have a strategic planner role that's going to market, and we also have the manager role going to market. In the interim, we have also brought in a casual resource with highly skilled credentials, who has the knowledge and desire to assist Susan and her team. So we are moving forward with the resources we've got and building a stronger internal team that is subject to market response. It is hard to get skill and knowledge in this space and in assessment space. There's a skilled shortage across Australia, and it's even harder in a regional area. But we have a team to get this done.
Thank you, General Manager. Are there any more questions? I think we might have a 10-minute recess. I might move a procedural motion for a 10-minute recess at 5:22. Could I get a seconder for that? Councillor Foley. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. We will recoup at 5:33.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just to confirm that we've just started the live streaming of the meeting.
Okay.
Or recommenced.
I will reconvene the meeting at 5:33 p.m. And where we kicked off was Mr. McKay was answering a lot of questions, and I think we have a couple more. Would somebody like any more questions? Councillor Foley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And through you, just a question on the consolidated DCP. How will it address future developments that are in the local housing strategy that don't yet exist, like Barrel South and Wensleydale?
Through you, Mr Mayor. So the Wingecarribee LEP, Local Environmental Plan 2010, has a Part 6, which clearly states that any new urban release area, such as the ones you've described, require site-specific DCPs to be established before development can occur. So they will sit in isolation, let's say, as part of a planning proposal proposition, if and when that time comes to the chamber and based on council support of those planning proposal decisions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Any more questions?
And one further question, just to clarify around the aims and objectives of this project, just to make sure we've got them right and not missed any here. So where you're working towards an optimal and efficient DCP, consolidated DCP, aiming to reduce DA times and maintaining the integrity of the villages and towns. Are there any other sort of main key aims or objectives?
The only one I would suggest is having alignment with the CSP once adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Any further questions? Councillor Moylan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager. We heard from the public forum that the consultant isn't a local consultant. Is that the case?
No, that is the case. Not a local. Has had experience in various councils, more urbanised environments, Sydney councils, Central Coast councils, etc., but not a local.
Okay. Thank you. Again, with the way this project's going to be worked on, would you say that the consultant's role wouldn't require that local knowledge, and that is with the in-house staff who will be working on it?
Yeah, so we have a strong inventory of local knowledge. So in the strategic outcomes team, we have some long-serving team members who, have great belief in the legacy of what's been created by the community. So that will be qualified in full by those staff. And yes, every consultant that I've ever dealt with, you have to educate them in local context.
Thank you. Happy?
So just to summarise, would you say that the fact that the consultant isn't local is not going to risk the local feel of the ultimate plan?
Not at all. The responsibility of the proposition lies with staff to this chamber. Simple as that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Now, I don't want to do it to everyone, but that was just question time. So you now have the ability to speak to this item. Would anybody like to speak to this item? Councillor Russell. So I'll just say, now that you're speaking to it, you'll have a 3-minute.
We know as councillors that we're not able to involve ourselves in individual development applications. Instead, one of our core roles and responsibilities is ensuring that our development control plan or plans are fit for purpose, to ensure that those individual DAs can be assessed efficiently, effectively and fairly. Too many people for too many years have had their lives and finances and relationships put through the ringer because as a council, for whatever reason, we have not had our DCP paperwork in order. And adding insult to injury, a scandalous amount of our valuable ratepayer dollars has been spent in legal actions in the Land and Environment Court. This is in large part due to our existing DCPs being incoherent, unaligned with existing legislation, and too heavily based on compliance with numerical standards. So it is imperative that we carefully consider the approach we take to refresh these documents into a single, sensible script. I appreciate that we are under a performance improvement order and that we cannot have the input that we would have perhaps liked, but I still commend the energy and the effort and the consideration that has gone into preparing this brief by council staff working with what we have as is. And I sincerely hope for our entire community that we can resolve this to everybody's satisfaction to create an elegant, efficient document for our community.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Champion.
Thank you. Our existing development controls, while in need of review and by no means perfect, are documents that have a lot of power and sway over the future of our shire and the kind of lives we live here in the Highlands. They've been developed over years of consultation to honour place-based nuances and celebrate the different streetscapes, environments and unique character of the towns and villages and precincts. We love these places because they are not all the same. Over the past week, I've received a lot of numerous representations from community members, as I know we all have, who've spent many hours of their time contributing to those DCPs and want to make sure that any process to change them has clear objectives that do not collapse the place-based detail that has been painstakingly developed. They also want to be sure that the plans to make those changes are done with full transparency and with clear opportunities for engagement and feedback. I'm grateful to the staff for explaining in such detail the intentions of the project. I think this conversation has been absolutely critical to maintain trust in the community as we proceed with such an important piece of our work. I also appreciate the acting GM's note that during this discussion that the community strategic plan will be one of the guiding documents that will inform and shape this process and will be part of the objectives of the DCP. And I note that we did in Globo, or I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong procedural language, vote in favour of putting the community strategic plan on exhibition today, and I would like to just reiterate how important the feedback from our community is on that document, and how I would really, I'm going to be encouraging the community to provide their feedback and use this conversation as an explanation for why things that we care about, like DCPs, will also be shaped by the community strategic plan, and I encourage other councillors to do the same.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Foley.
Thank you. So what I've heard as a councillor from residents who've reached out was that residents want more than just a simplified version of the existing DCPs, but something that will improve the built form, urban structure and housing diversity within the Highlands. And we need to ensure that this is not a missed opportunity to achieve something impactful through the consolidation in moving towards the comprehensive DCP. I'd like to thank those who spoke in the forum today and who've reached out to the councillors on this matter. We know that we have an incredibly engaged and well-informed community that seeks the best outcomes for Wingecarribee. And it's essential that their input is listened to and is considered when it comes to community engagement around the DCP. And I think we've had some reassurances about that today. DCPs are important documents. They're the rules that shape our towns and villages and changes to existing places and what our new developments will look like. Each of our towns and villages has its own uniqueness that should be recognised by the DCP. External pressures to increase population should not come at the cost of poor planning outcomes. And in this, we will need a clear and well-designed standards to guide this growth. So there is no doubt that the current set of documents that make up the DCP is overly complex and in places outdated, and in cases has led to inferior outcomes. The complexity has contributed to residents' frustration in unnecessary delays in development applications. A comprehensive DCP needs to represent meaningful reform that will lead to better urban outcomes, improved housing choices and efficient planning processes. And thank you for the clarification today on the aims and objectives around what this DCP consolidation is working towards.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Smith, would you like your right of reply?
I'd just like to say thank you to the Acting General Manager for that very comprehensive discussion today, and I think that really helps us and helps shine a light on some of the areas of concern. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I second that. Thank you very much. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. .17 Sewer Manhole Renewal 2025 Tender Evaluation Report. The recommendation is on page 54 of the agenda. Could I get a mover, please? Councillor Moylan, and a seconder. Councillor Farrell. Councillor Moylan.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to, through you, Mr Mayor, ask some questions to the General Manager on this procurement. So a local supplier was a qualified bidder in this procurement, and they're from Mittagong. The successful supplier was the cheapest and is not a local supplier, and they've also done work before for us. So given that, was there comprehensive feedback given to the local supplier in Mittagong so that they can learn, develop and hopefully reduce barriers to entry should they have an opportunity next time?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I understand that feedback is given to all submitting or tenderers. Often that feedback can't be given until the tender is awarded. But I will refer to our Director of Service and Project Delivery just to provide any added value comment.
Thank you, General Manager. Through you, Mr Mayor, the one thing I guess I want to stress is all of our tenders are undertaken in accordance with our procurement policy. As part of that procurement policy, we are required to have a endorsed tender evaluation plan, and that plan clearly outlines what the, I guess, evaluation criteria and the appropriate weighting, and some of that is mandatory. One of those mandatory components is a minimum of 10% for effectively local procurement. Now, within that category of local procurement, there are a range of responses that potential tenderers can provide. So yes, they may be a local business that have a premise here. They may be a business that comes into our shire but use local businesses and tradesmen, or they may be someone that potentially just brings labour in to the shire and not use. That is all evaluated as part of the evaluation criteria, and it's why we have I guess an evaluation between both non-price and price, to ensure that we get not only someone that can do the role, but we also get an efficient outcome and efficient use of funds for the community.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes, thank you. Through you again, Mr General Manager, can we get without an amendment, can we get a commitment that we will give comprehensive feedback to the Mittagong supplier?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, a firm commitment on that.
Great. Any further questions? Would anyone else like to speak to this? Okay. With that, I will now put the motion. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously. Item 8.18, Northern Villages Distribution Main, Stage 1A, Tender Evaluation Report. The recommendation is on page 58 of the agenda. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Foley, a seconder. Councillor Smith. Councillor Foley. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Moylan.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a question through you to the General Manager. Does the scope of the master plan for this include Balmoral Village and Wingelow and Penrose Village?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll refer to the Director of Service and Project Delivery to assist with the question.
Thank you, General Manager. Through you, Mr Mayor, in response to the question, no, it does not. There was a comprehensive community consultation undertaken through early 2023. with the paper being presented to Council in the May meeting of 2023, following that consultation, where it showed that there was not support within those, I guess, northern, southern and western villages that currently do not have a water supply to extend the water supply into those areas. This project is purely about, I guess, reassuring the existing supply to predominantly the Hilltop, Yarranbull and Colo Vale townships, and making sure that they have better pressure and better regularity of supply.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. And given there has been a budget blowout in this procurement, have stages 2 and 3 been rescoped so that we don't risk another blowout?
General Manager.
For you, Mr Mayor, or a further question to Director of Service and Project Delivery.
Through you, Mr Mayor. At this stage, no, they haven't. So if you read through the business paper, what you will see, the main blowout of budget as you would present it, is mainly due to the timing of when the initial estimate was proposed and what was required to do or changes made through the detailed design. So initially there was a project budget of $800,000, which was done early on from a concept design perspective. As a detailed design was done, there was some key changes that had to be made to the design, predominantly moving it away from the road virgin into, I guess, the road alignment, which then requires the resealing of it. Now that was done to preserve some of our natural environment and mature trees. The latest budget estimate is now being done on that detailed design and has been validated by an independent quantity survey.
Thank you. Councillor Farley, any more questions?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you again, Mr General Manager. Just to clarify that stages 2 and 3 aren't at risk in terms of budget because that isolated issue of the native trees has been dealt with in stage 1 in terms of the budget. Have I understood that correctly?
General Manager.
I'll refer that question to the Director, Service and Project Delivery. We may need some assistance from the CFO as well, just to confirm those positions.
I will actually confer to the CFO just to confirm the years and the allocations within the budget.
We are currently working on the 4-year budget projection with a base year 25-26. So if it was included in the 24-25 financial year, I would say yes. It is funded from the water fund, so it's not general revenue. There is adequate funds in there. So if it is a priority, the answer would be yes, it would be funded.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Moylan?
Thank you. One more question through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager. I saw the feedback from the communities in Balmoral, Wingelow, Penrose. Is it anecdotally, in your experience, do whole communities reject having water supply? It just doesn't seem to pass the pub test for me.
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, in my experience, I've primarily worked in urban areas where water supply and communities isn't guided by the local council. So I don't have any experience in communities accepting or rejecting that. I'm not sure if any director who has more rural experience than me. I only had 1 year of rural experience and water supply wasn't an issue. So that's the best I can answer that question.
Thank you. Any further questions?
No, I'll take the feedback on face value that these communities don't want water supply. I'm guessing it's because they prefer rainwater and perhaps avoiding an increase in fees. But it's surprising to me to not want water supply and the lift in value in property. But I'll take the evidence as it's been presented.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this? Would you like right of reply, Councillor Foley? With that, I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.19, Digitisation Project, Procurement Exemption. The recommendation is on page 63 of the agenda. Could I have a mover for this? Councillor Smith. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Farrell. Councillor Smith, would you like to speak to this? Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Moylan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a shining example of thoughtful procurement and the well-being that it can bring to a society and community. And this one in particular, as you would have read, councillors and Mr Mayor, is avoiding the procurement rigour and still meeting obligations and being able to provide a service to a supplier who employs disabled people, which is fantastic. What the question I have through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager is, given this was last reviewed in October 2022 and the supplier is not a local supplier, is there opportunity to review this so that we can have one of our many disability service suppliers offered this opportunity and therefore extend the well-being to our local community?
So to clarify, you're asking specifically for a local disability service to apply for the job. Okay, could I have an answer to that, please, General Manager?
I may refer to the Director of Corporate Strategy and Resourcing to assist. But in response to your question, I think what has to be treated are the officer recommendations as they sit. I think that's the most important thing. So it's either supporting those as a chamber or proposing something else.
Thank you, General Manager. Is there anyone else? Any more questions? Sorry, Councillor Moylan.
I might just clarify my question. Given this doesn't need to go through the procurement rigour, again to you, General Manager, through the Mayor, can we take this opportunity and look at a local disability services supplier to take this contract instead of the non-local supplier?
So I think the General Manager answered in the fact that it was either accept this motion or don't, or make an amendment. So if you'd like to make an amendment, you can. I believe he's answered the question, unless you would like to add anything further. Yeah, would you like to make an amendment?
I'd just like the answer to the question.
Can you ask the question again, please?
Can we offer this opportunity to a local disability employment service supplier instead of a non-local one, given we don't have to go through the rigours of procurement?
General Manager, can you confirm that under this recommendation, Councillor Moylan's question is valid, or would it require a change to this recommendation?
Because there is a procurement question for a specific party in front of you, I'm of the opinion that needs to be addressed first. So it's either addressed through deciding on this recommendation or proposing something different, you can consider an alternate recommendation that is facilitating what you desire, but you must treat this recommendation, particularly that there's particular parties impacted, and it still is a procurement process under our policy.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll reframe my question. Are there any constraints, be it cost, be it capability, that we know of to consider a local supplier?
For that question, I'll refer to the Director of Corporate Strategy and Resourcing, who may then refer to her direct reports to provide some clarity.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the clarification of the question, Councillor Moylan. The constraints are simple, and I believe they've been outlined in the report. It's time and money, and also the significant setup and establishment costs to continue with or to break away from an existing relationship that's working very well. Back to the General Manager's point, irrespective of the exemption that's provided for under the Act, we still have an obligation to the community using their funds responsibly, so there would still need to be some level of market testing and capability testing. In the interest of this, the recommendation is before you, and we stand behind it. This is the quickest and most effective path home.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Moylan?
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager and the Director, do we have a quantum on the cost of setup?
General Manager.
I'll refer that question to the Director of Corporate Strategy and Resourcing.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to actually refer that to our Chief Information Officer, who may be able to provide this very specific level of detail.
Thank you. Through the General Manager, so there is an exceptional amount of money that's required to set up such a facility for scanning. The entity that we've put forward already has the setup. They've got the facility, they've got the housing of equipment to be able to do this. We have reached out to a local entity. They weren't capable of doing such services, but we will continue to reach out locally when it is available. We would then potentially have them discussions. But for the moment, the only entity that we're aware of in New South Wales is the one that we've put forward, and another one in Western Australia.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes, thank you for that. We got there, and I think we can summarise that the constraint around this...
Have you got any more questions?
...procurement, other than to just put it on the record that it's a capability question here.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Foley, would you like your... Councillor Smith, would you like your right of reply? With that, I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Traffic Committee meetings. Traffic Committee minutes on 21st November. The recommendation is on page 82 of the agenda. Could I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Farrell. And a seconder. Councillor Russell. Councillor Farrell, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, I move the officer's recommendation, points 1 and 2, with a change to point 3.
Sorry, I'll just stop you there. It'll have to be an amendment now that we've had a seconder. So you'd like to move an amendment?
Yeah, sure.
And could I please get the wording of that amendment?
To point 3.
Just the whole wording of your amendment, please. Yeah, what you were just about to read is fine.
Well, I move the recommendations in point 1 and 2 and reject the non-unanimous local traffic committee recommendation, TC 2024/1.
Clarify, you want item as number 3 and you want the original item number 3 removed in its entirety?
Correct.
We'll just get that up on the computer. And while that's happening, could I just get to check that we've got the right reference number there, please?
For you, Mr Mayor, it's item TC 2024/71. Is that correct?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
Great. Are you happy with that wording on the screen there?
Yes.
Could I get a seconder for that, please? Councillor Russell, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I'd like to see a unanimous local traffic committee recommendation rather than leave it up in the air like that.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Russell.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I have questions to whichever member of staff. I understand that this DA was approved in regards to omitting this. I understand that this was approved by the Land and Environment Court.
Sorry, Councillor, are you speaking to the amendment?
I'm asking a question.
Sorry, okay. Great.
I note that work's been undertaken in the last month on the driveway and a no right-hand turn sign has been erected opposite to the driveway to the subdivision. Yet in the business paper, prior to in the details of the notes, that was part of what would need to be approved by council. So I just have a question about how was procedure followed, and I don't know whether this is even within my remit, so I'm asking that too. But how was it that an incomplete solution to traffic management was able to start to be imposed before this had been endorsed by council, given that the decision from the traffic committee was not unanimous?
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, you are correct. There was a Land Environment Court ruling in 2023. Those conditions of consent state that prior to a subdivision work certificate, the applicant proponent must seek a Section 138 approval. The condition is singular. It says it must seek a 138 approval, which they did for the works in the road reserve directly in front of the property, let's say, where the other portion, which is before you now, is on the other side of a bridge, the western side of a bridge, which requires an additional 138 certificate. The conditions of consent clearly say that they cannot have a subdivision certificate. So there's a subdivision work certificate, which allows them to do work on site, and a 138 allows them to do work on the road. So they've commissioned those. So subdivision work certificate for the site itself, and a 138 for the eastern roadworks, but not a 138 for the western, which is in front of you. But the conditions of consent clearly say that they cannot have a subdivision certificate, which creates a linen plan registered on title, without all items being addressed. So the developer has taken it upon their own risk to undertake works under appropriate approvals, knowing or not knowing their conditions of consent. The responsibility is with them. The risk is with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions?
I'll speak to the amendment now.
Okay.
am grateful for the contributions from the public forum today that really did articulate the fact that this proposal is still has no assurance of safety, that people would still have to be doing a right-hand turn on a tricky corner, and so I support the amendment.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the amendment? With that, I will put the amendment. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously. We now have to deal with the motion with the new amendment. Sorry, councillor. Okay. Sorry, guys, my head's getting a bit fuzzy. Would anyone like to speak to the motion now with the amended item added? Okay. Would Councillor Farrell, would you like right of reply on that?
No, I think you've said enough.
With that, I will put the motion. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. And we arrive to our final item of the night, 9.1, Notice of Motion, the Mayoral Honour Board. This motion is listed on page 87 of the agenda and was submitted by Councillor Russell. Councillor Russell, would you like to move your motion? And could I get a seconder for this, please? Councillor Moylan. Councillor Russell.
Many people have voiced their ongoing dissatisfaction to me, both publicly and privately, regarding the improper nature of the administrator's name being placed on our Mayoral Honour Board. I hear them and I agree with them. We need to be aware that as a governing body, we can set precedents with our decisions and actions, or in turn, indecision and inaction. I would reason with you, my colleagues on council, that it is just as important that we attend to this in symbolic matters and honours as it is in matters of policy. Otherwise, improper actions left unchecked can be pointed to as customary or historical. I would also suggest that correcting errors when, on reflection, they are found to have been made is an important precedent to be setting as a fresh new council. This is a very simple proposition. It seeks to call a mayor, an administrator. It is based on the law, on ordinary language, and on usage. Nothing could be more straightforward. The Act clearly sets out the role of the mayor, which is to lead the council, and is the role of an elected official elected by our community. The role of the administrator exercises appointment from the minister and exercises the functions of the governing body, i.e. the council, while exercising the appointment of the minister. At no point and in no way does it say that an administrator is a de facto mayor for mayoral purposes. It does not say that he exercises the functions as such of a mayor. The placing of the administrator's name on our mayoral roll has never, ever passed the pub test. If we had asked the community at the time, being as extraordinary a matter as it is, we know the answer would have been no. If we ask them now, interestingly, after we've been elected and you would have thought that this issue had gone away, the action still remains deemed inappropriate and improper. This notice seeks to maintain clear boundaries on roles and responsibilities, which, after all, is a principle of good governance. I commend this motion to the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Kent.
I think you have to, yep. I'd like to propose an alternate motion to this.
Could I, amendment?
Yes.
Could I get the wording of the amendment, please?
I'll try and hope it is clear. So I agree with the intent of Councillor Russell's motion, but I'll read the motion first and we can have a discussion. That council remove Viv names May from the list of mayors and replace it with the word administration. And under the list of mayors, the term administration is removed and replaced with Viv May's name.
So just go through that again,
Yep.
please.
What? Yep. Do you want to go from the top?
Yes, please.
Yep. That council remove Viv May's name from the list of mayors. So there's a thing out there with a list of mayors, and replace it with the word administration. And that under the list of mayors, the term administration, because at the moment the word administration is out there, that the term administration is removed and replaced with Viv May's name. What I'm basically proposing is that rather than just having 3 stars and a vacancy next to the removal of the administrator's name, we have the word administration, so it's clear to the public and everyone reading the board that between 21 and 24 we were actually in administration. And then you follow the stars, you go down to the existing footnote and it'll have who the administrator was. So I'm really just swapping the location of Viv May's name down to the bottom and putting the term administration up the top so it's clear there's not just a blank thing with 3 stars.
Okay, thank you. I'll just let the guys work on that and then I'll just get you to double check.
Yeah, because otherwise we're going to have a blank, you're going to have 3 stars, just have a list of mayors and 3 stars, whereas we're in administration for that period. Yeah, because it says who was the administrator in that time, which is just a statement of fact. And if there's issues that come up, we can go back. Well, no, I think you have to consider whether you.
Sorry, guys, could I just get you to discuss that once we get to it? Is that the right place? Could I ask a clarifying question of the General Manager? It would mitigate costs. Obviously, my name will go up there eventually. Do you know when a name goes on a board?
Through you, Mr Mayor, generally at the conclusion of the tenure of a mayor.
Take his name off.
I'll also offer another, if you're looking for efficiency.
Sorry, I'll just get these councillors to please.
Sorry, just in response to your question, if you're looking for efficiency and if there is some content change, then there is an opportunity to list the current mayor's name with a commencing year of 2024 and just leaving the concluding year blank.
Do you believe that should be in the recommendation or that's something we could just have done?
Well, I would say it's not part of the report. It's not part of a recommendation, but I don't see any barrier to doing that.
Okay. Sorry, I'm having my own little conversation over here. Apologies. Are you happy with the wording of that?
Can someone repeat the word?
I was just saying for efficiency's sake.
To add, absolutely.
I believe we clarified it doesn't need to be built into this recommendation.
No.
So no.
So I'm happy with
Happy with the wording?
Yeah. It comes back to Councillor Russell being happy with or accepting of the proposed alternate.
Okay.
If you could just pause a moment so I can consult a bit further with David Kent about the wording of his amendment.
Sure.
With your permission, could we just duck out and have a look at the board?
Sure. We'll have a 5-minute recess. I'll just go into recess. Could I move? Reconvene the meeting at 6:22. Just confirm the live stream's active.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, live stream has recommenced.
So where we kicked off, Councillor Kent, could you double check these words and let me know if they're okay or if they need to be fixed up?
They're not quite right. We just need to delete everything after the first word administration. Thank you.
Okay. And so we've removed the section where Viv's May's name would return somewhere else?
No, just, we have. Yeah, we're just nice and simple.
Councillor. Do you?
I do indeed.
Okay. What was the original motion? Okay. So just so I can get an understanding, the original motion was to leave the stars on and remove his name, and now we're removing everything and just having administration.
No, we're going to leave the stars. So just have the word administration, leave the stars there, which will then take the reader to where the stars appear below the list of mayors, and it's just going to say administrator appointed by government, etc., etc. So the stars will take the person to the explanation of, you know, administration, what was it?
Okay, so his name will not appear on the board.
His name will not appear on the board.
Thank you for that clarification. You accept this?
I do.
Motion? So this now becomes the motion. I believe you have a seconder. Councillor Moylan was a seconder. Would anybody else like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Moylan.
I'd like to thank Councillor Russell for her leadership on this matter. And at the outset, I'll say that whilst roads, DA delays, local suppliers, infrastructure are all top priorities for all of us, this is an example where we can make quick decisions on things and do more than one thing at a time. Personally, this is something that I committed to in our election campaign, and that's why I'm supporting this today. And I'm confident that we can, as I said, not deprioritise our priorities by working through matters such as this. So I support the amended motion today.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Farrell.
I'd just like to excuse me. I'd just like to thank Councillor Kent for clarifying the whole thing and making it so much simpler, and brought it to I think, a good conclusion. Thank you, David.
Would anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Kent.
Just to say, when this one first came up, I didn't sort of give it much stead. I thought, like you, Councillor Moylan, roads, rates, rubbish, everything else. But actually, on reflection over the week, you know, Mr May was not the mayor, and the mayor is a publicly elected official, goes through that arduous process we all went through to get elected. And so I just feel like this is cleaner. And to use Councillor Farrell's words earlier, I'm hoping for a unanimous decision.
And sorry, I'll clarify one more time. We're not going to have two stabs at this. They'll just do it when they do my name. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm writing an email right at this point in time to make sure that costs are kept to a minimum by including your name in the refresh.
Okay, thank you. With that, sorry, anyone else want to speak to this? Councillor Smith.
I think this is a good resolution, and I think that now this makes it factual. So let's move on.
Absolutely. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Is there anything further, General Manager?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to thank you for your support as Chair. I'd like to thank the councillors for their support in my maiden stint at Acting General Manager and the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will close the meeting at 6:27. That's it. Thank you.